Hello everyone, my name is Greg Amerson and welcome to my talk about improved developer experience for 7.1. I have been working for Liferay for over 8 years and I started the Liferay IDE project, the Eclipse plugin, and that moved into Developer Studio. And then I've been working the last few years on back-end developer tools, Gradle and Maven plugins, and then most recently our team has been working on the new Intellij plugin, which maybe hopefully some of you have gotten a chance to use. We'll show that a little later. So I love coming to DevCon. I especially love coming to DevCon in Amsterdam. I watched the Tour de France this year, and the second place finisher was a guy from the Netherlands, Tom Dumoulin. He's a very impressive rider, very strong rider. I can't believe what he can do on the bike. And then my son, he really likes to race bicycles, cyclocross, and so he's just getting into the sport. And I'm saying, who are the best in the sport? And once again, it's people from the Netherlands. And so I'm seeing a pattern, and then I come to, I'm like, how are all these Dutch people so good at riding their bikes? And then I come to the Netherlands, I come to Amsterdam, and I start to see why they're riding it from a very young age. And so that's been really fun to see. You know, Tom Dumoulin probably was riding his bike like this all over Amsterdam or some city he grew up in. Maybe he was like this person. It was 5 kids on one bicycle. I would like to try that, actually. That looks pretty fun. That's why we have multiple kids, in case you lose one. Yeah, so I have 3 kids of my own, and we like to ride bicycles. So recently this summer, I read a book. It was Tale of Two Cities. It was a great novel. It immediately jumped into my top 5 favorite novels of all time, and I'll tell you the other 4 once I finish reading them. And so in the very beginning of this book, it has this great quote, and I always heard this quote, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. But I didn't know that that's just the beginning of the sentence. It actually goes on quite long. Charles Dickens has forgotten more about the English language than I'll ever know. And so it's quite a sentence. But when I read this last part of the sentence, it made me think of the Liferay Developer Experience, talking about how it seems to be that in that period of time, during that point in history, 2 people were living in the same city, but they experienced completely different realities. And the way they would describe those realities was only in the most extreme manner. It was either the best or it was the complete worst. And so this makes me think of the developer experience we've been going through at Liferay, both internally and now externally. So internally, we realize it's the age of modularity, it's the epoch of semantic versioning, it's the season of extensibility, the spring of configurability. But I realize now, we've been talking internally and with customers that that's not the city you have been living in dealing with developing on 7.0. It's the age of I don't have any idea what the versions are supposed to be now. I don't even know where to get the portal sources, or my IDE crashes when I open the portal sources. Or I compiled the jars like I always have, the projects, but when I deploy them, they're not working. So it's the spring of stack traces. You know, they're everywhere now. And once I do get it working, it takes a long time to iterate because redeploying takes even longer. So we realized this. We realized we've been in the same city, but what we would talk about that city would be drastically different. So we had a meeting about 8 or 9 months ago saying, what do we do? How do we fix this? How do we address these developer, specifically all across the board, back-end, front-end upgrades? And so we came up with a plan for how to improve it for 7.1. And that involves upgrades, the portlet developers, and then front-end developers, and how do you adopt these new trends and technologies. And so my talk will only be concentrating on the portlet developer aspect of it, the back-end developer, Java developer. But there were 2 talks yesterday, so go back in time yesterday and watch these 2 talks here. One from Alberto on 10 reasons upgrading is maybe surprisingly pleasant in 7.1. And then Yvonne's talk about modern front ends. Very compelling things in there. So, you know, grab your quantum tunneler and go back, or just wait for them to be uploaded to YouTube later on, and you can rewatch those. Hopefully some of you were able to attend those. So one of the first things we did, trying to address the version issue and the explosion of modules, is we wanted to add a type of dependency management to the developer experience. So specifically for using Liferay plugins like Liferay Workspace, Liferay Gradle plugins, we wanted to add this notion of setting a target platform, this ability to just declare what version of Liferay you're using, and then all of your versions that you're going to depend on are just handled automatically. Very much like it used to be. You just pointed at the unzip bundle, and then what version, it didn't matter. So we want the modularity and configurability, but then we also want that ease of use. So we have a new Gradle plugin. It's automatically configured for Liferay Workspace. It uses, we generate Maven bombs now. So I'll show you here, if you search in our Nexus repository for this artifact, you'll see that for all the new once we have this feature finished, we started releasing Maven bombs for all of our releases. And this is a nice, thing that you can use in your own tooling. We have existing GAs, all future GAs, also for customers, for DXP releases, service packs, fix packs, we will have bombs for all those. If there's one that you're using and you don't have, let's say you're still on a previous 7.0 GA5, for instance, and you, for some reason, can't go to GA7, but you want to use the bomb, just let my team know. We'll generate it and upload it for you. And there's a lot of configuration you can do this plugin. If you have your own bombs that you're using, maybe you're adopting another framework of Vaadin or something like that, and they produce a bomb, you can use this plugin to also configure that. And with this target platform feature, we have support in both the Eclipse and Intellij plugins. So not only from the command line, so you can configure your Gradle builds to use this feature, but both of the plugins and Eclipse and Intellij, we have support for that, and we'll show that. And we already have documentation for this that I've linked in here for you. So let me actually demo that for you. So here I have a Liferay workspace. I have a few modules already generated, a portlet and a service builder module. And in my Gradle.properties, that's how you configure your workspace plugin. I have a new property that we have available, and this is called the target platform version. And when you set this tells the plugin which of the bombs it needs to download and import into your build, and then configure your dependencies. So, and the tooling understands that if you have target platform enabled, then it will generate project dependencies that look a little different. So here's my portlet. You notice what we don't have. We don't have any versions. So that's one of the great things. You can get rid of the versions. The versions are still there, but you just don't have to put them in, and then now upgrade's easier. You just change the property and the new versions get automatically applied. So that's nice. You can see here that in this project, in the dependencies, it's automatically got the correct portal kernel version. And another nice thing about this, at least the integration into the IDEs, both Intellij and Eclipse, is that now, if you look at the top level of the project, we have indexed all of the jars and the sources. So you can do some good things when you're developing. You don't have to have the portal source checked out or downloaded or sitting around somewhere. We'll actually just index it for you. And then you can do things like I can navigate to the implementation. So instead of going to the interface like normal and saying that's not useful, I can go to implementation, and it's going to look up the index and say, oh, okay, here's the implementation, and now I can dig into the actual code. So that's really nice. So portal impl, portal kernel, all of those sources are available for you. Another thing that's a neat thing that you can do is that type hierarchies. So now you can browse the type hierarchies. So I can simply open up MVC portlet, and then I have access to whatever version of Liferay I'm targeting. I can see, oh, I want to look at what the export import portlet is doing, and then you can read the code, search it, search for references to particular features and services, and kind of get an idea of how to build your apps like we do in Liferay. So that's target platform. You can see the same thing over in the Intellij plugin here. So I have a workspace project in the Intellij, and then here you can see that it's indexed everything. And to show you the configuration a little bit more explicitly, so I'll go here. Notice that my portlet, see, where's my portlet class? My portlet is portal kernel 362. That happens to be what's in GA1. And then I go in here and I just simply switch this to 7.1.1, so the GA2 release. Hit save, refresh, refresh the Gradle configuration. And then automatically updated to 3.39.1. So now I'll have all of those sources indexed. Now, when you try this, it's the first time you do it, it's going to take a little bit of time because the Target Platform plugin will download everything that's in the BOM and put it in your cache locally and index everything. So it won't be as fast as I just showed there. It will be the second time you do it, just not the first time. Just be prepared for that. Be on a fast internet connection. Oh, look, I have a, this is actually news to me. I have a compile error when I updated to GA2. Hello, breaking change. Well, actually, I didn't regenerate build service. So that's part of our upgrade tooling that automatically, when you go from one version to another, it doesn't walk you through those upgrade steps. We'll talk a little more about the upgrade tool later. So that's the Target Platform feature. Actually, I'm going to switch back to GA1 because the rest of my demos might break if I'm on GA2. So let me do that real quick. Okay, now compile errors went away. Okay, so that is the kind of addressing some of those issues we're talking about with versioning and what's the right portal sources. So that's one feature that we added for 7.1. It also works for 7.0. So if you're on 7.0 and you've not upgraded to 7.1 yet, it works there too. It doesn't work for 6.2. So this is something that you'll have to upgrade to take advantage of. Another thing that we wanted to do for portlet developers is simply make it faster when they're developing their portlets, when they're developing their modules. And so we took some inspiration from some community members and also from just some internal development of building this for our own internal development, ability to just watch for changes and automatically refresh from the command line, not having to do it in this IDE or that IDE, but actually doing it from the command line tooling. So we wrote a new feature. I have Liferay running here, so you can see Liferay is running. Let me hit the website. Let's see. Yeah, there we go. This is a GA1. And I have the same workspace. And we have a Gradle task called watch, but it's better to use the Blade CLI to use watch because it does some additional things like cleaning up before and after the build, and then also removing the modules once you're finished watching them. It does some things like that. So you just simply go from your modules directory. So in Workspace, I have these 3 projects. And now I could watch one individually, but most likely what you want to do, you want to deploy all of your modules and then watch them for changes. And what the watch task does, let me actually just pull up these so I don't. So it's a new command in Blade called watch, and then it uses a watch task that's in Gradle in Liferay Workspace. And for all of your modules, it builds them as an exploded jar, so as a directory, and then it tells Liferay to just load the modules directly from disk. Don't actually deploy them into the runtime and do all of that stuff, and then caching and all that stuff that makes it slow. Just simply install them directly, and then load the resources directly out of the user's project. And so then when you make changes to your JSPs or your CSS files, your JavaScript files, or your Java files, then OSGI doesn't have to go nearly as far to see the new changes. We refresh the bundles in the container for you automatically. So it watches for changes, and then it just does the minimum amount of refreshes you need to do to get your changes up to date. It supports portlets, service builder, themes. We're working on war support. So if you're doing like Spring MVC portlet or something in a war, we're working on support there. And then we're researching how to do this in Maven. We have there is some available plugins for Maven that do this type of watching your sources and re-executing goals. We need to take a look at what's there and figure out what we need to add. If any one of you are using some kind of a watch or live deploy feature in Maven, please tell me afterwards, or my team is trying to look at that now. So let me just show you that. So I'm at my modules directory, and then I just run Blade Watch. And it's going to look at all of the modules that are in that directory, figure out what it needs to do to build them, and then it's going to build them and then communicate with Liferay and install everything. So you can see now, open up a new terminal. There's my 3 bundles that have been added. And then we can oh man, too fancy. Okay, so if I go back to the source and then I just go to the portlet, oh, did it detect? Okay, did it save it? It just worked before I came, of course. Now what it will do is, so it's actually detecting what type of change you're doing to your module, and if it's just a JSP or a CSS file change or something that doesn't actually need to recompile any classes, it does the minimal refresh. So you can try this on your own. Actually, we're going to release the next version of Blade hopefully next week. So it's not quite available yet. Looks like still have some bugs to work out. Maybe we can go back and get it to work in a little while. But then when you stop watching the change, so you can see when I make the change, let's try it again. Okay, but it didn't refresh it. Okay. We'll move on. So that is the watch feature that we've developed. Another thing that we want to mention we've done for 7.1, or we've done that, is we have an Intellij plugin. So for years, we come into DevCon and more people have been asking about an Intellij plugin. And so we didn't have the experience on my team to do that, and then we got a great outside contribution. So Dominique Marks, is he in here? If he is, if you are, raise your hand. There he is in the back. So he came forward and said that him and his team and his company that's on the bottom there, they have developed this for their own use, and they wanted to share it with the Liferay community. And it was right at the same time we were saying, okay, we need to build this plugin. So we're very grateful for his contribution. He has added many features to it. So you can go to the URL, you can see the plugin, give us, open an issue, some feature request you'd like to see. We have a blog release that shows the highlights of what we have done so far. It's out of the box, it has wizards and support for Liferay workspace projects, Gradle and Maven, also creating individual module projects, portlets and the like. And then we have support for the Liferay server for launching the workspace, whatever server you have configured in Liferay workspace, launching that server, debugging it. Also, we have the target platform support, like I was showing earlier in Intellij, so you can search Liferay portal sources. And then, but the contribution we got from Dominique and is great, is that it adds all this support for languages that you use as a Liferay developer. So, for instance, working on the BND file, you get code assist. This is just one example of, so a Liferay, JSPs, tag libs, JavaScript files, CSS files. So you get a lot of, language level editing support. XML files. So if you have Liferay XML configuration, you can navigate around to resources in your projects. So it's very good for day-to-day development, and we appreciate him and his contribution. So another thing that we did for 7.1 is specifically around teams that are building large modules, or they're building maybe OSGI modules, and they're deploying them into Liferay, and they're not quite sure why things are not working because there's some unmet dependency, or they're running into some problem that they don't quite understand why it's not working, and so they're spelunking around inside the portal and trying to figure out why is it not running in the runtime, and it slows things down. And so what we wanted to do is we wanted to provide developers a way to validate their modules at build time so that they can find out quicker what what's wrong with my module? Why is it not working in Liferay? And so we did this by bringing in the B&D Tools OSGI Resolver. So that is a feature that it has in there using this OSGI Resolver that will take your modules, and it will take your runtime, and then it will build up a table of all of the requirements that your modules have, all of your run requirements, let's say, to run those modules in Liferay, and then it compares those against what Liferay is providing in its runtime. And this is exactly what's happening when you deploy them to runtime. Liferay, or the OSGI runtime in Liferay, is doing the same calculation. What we've done is we've brought that closer to the code, brought that closer into your build so that you can know, without Liferay even running, without even having to deploy, you can know, is my project going to work once I deploy it? And then it will give you an error and try to give you an error that's actionable, that you can figure out what I need to do. And we have documentation on, okay, these are the common errors you're likely to see when you run this task, and here's how to solve them. So let's look at that a little bit. So the first thing you do is just go to your workspace. Now, when I canceled my watch task from earlier, you can see that it actually uninstalled all of the bundles. So just know that if you're using the watch task, that where did my portlet go once I canceled the watch? It actually uninstalls them. Because the reason it does that is we can't let Liferay continue, we can't let OSGI continue to be thinking that the bundle is there, because you might delete the project or switch branches or something, and all of a sudden the bundle contents have gone, and it could actually confuse Liferay. So we just uninstall them on cancel. So now to the resolving. So let's say I have several modules, so I can run this Gradle task called resolve, and it's going to take all of your modules except for the ones that now you can configure, and you can say don't resolve these modules because they're not interesting or they're not useful. And then it compares them to Liferay. Now, how does it do it without Liferay running? So another part of the target platform feature is that on every release, we create a distro file. And we can see that it's really not that important, but just to show you. You can see that we have this distro file for the releases, and what is in that distro file is it's a jar. It's like 100K that has all of the runtime capabilities of Liferay packed into that jar. So that 100K represents the OSGI configuration space of the Liferay runtime without Liferay having to be running. And so what this task does is it downloads that based on your target platform version, downloads that distro, and then it actually takes all of your modules, and then it invokes the OSGI resolver and says, here's the user's modules he's trying to build, and I want you to resolve them against this Liferay metadata, this Liferay distribution, as it will, as you are. That's why we call it, that's why it's called distro. And then it prints you out interesting information if it can't resolve. So this resolve, it was successful, so that means everything should deploy. But let's say, and very commonly, you have an API, and you have some service that you want to, or actually, let's say that you're depending on some API, right? And that API, you can see it, but let's see. But let's say for some reason you're compiling against it, but that bundle is not actually exporting its API. So I'll actually just remove that export, but you can see that this, but then I will depend on it here, and then I'll try to run resolve. So now I have a portlet that's depending on a service API, and it's compiling fine, but actually at runtime, that package from the API jar is not going to be exported. And normally, you wouldn't figure that out until after you've deployed it in Liferay. Maybe you've uploaded it to the container or done whatever, and then you find out the error, and that's too late. So here we actually see that, okay, it's missing this package. So that gives you a hint, oh, why isn't the API package available? This is still a little bit terse, the output of the resolve command, but we have documentation that covers the different scenarios you're likely to see. So we'll go back and we'll put it back. And now the resolve command should be successful. So where you're more likely to come into contact with this is not your own modules, because you kind of have control of those. It's someone else's. Oh, actually, okay. So now it's saying that the API is there, but actually the string service that I'm injecting, it can't find it. Okay, if you notice, if you go back over here to the portlet, I have a reference to a string service. Now this is just something I made up, but I have a reference to a service and it compiles fine, the jar builds, but then I deploy it to, normally I would deploy it to Liferay and it's, this portlet won't start because there's some unmet dependency on this service. So now the resolver is telling me, you're injecting the string service, but you're requiring the string service, but there's no one providing it. And we say, why is that? Well, actually in my fictitious setup here, here's something that's implementing the string service, right? But it's not actually a component. Therefore, it's not actually registered in OSGI service. So in other words, the metadata that this is providing a service is not available, so the resolver fails. So I can actually, okay, make that a service. Now I can resolve. And so now this bundle, that service jar, is actually contributing the service metadata. And so now the resolver knows, okay, well, your service reference is going to work. So this is all stuff that happens inside of Liferay when you deploy. We're just bringing that back into the build now so that you can know it before you deploy. But another thing I want to show, and this is where you're most likely going to run into this, you probably already have run into this, is that I've got my service, my implementation, maybe it's a portlet, whatever, and I'm going to depend on some third-party library, right? We all do this. That's why Maven downloads the internet. We depend on third-party libraries. So here, I have a dependency on Apache Commons. I'm going to use that in my implementation to, okay, what can go wrong here? It compiles, it builds, I deploy to Liferay, my portlet doesn't work. But now the resolver can tell us why. Hopefully. Okay, it's saying the string service is not available. If you go to the very bottom, it's kind of like a stack trace. Go to the very bottom, it's saying that it can't find the Commons Lang3 package. Well, why not? Because those of you that have run into this and have already fixed it, you know, is because just because you have compiled here, that doesn't mean that that package is going to be available in runtime in Liferay. So there's a couple things you can do here. You can either make it available in Liferay, like put it in the OSGI modules folder, the Commons Lang3, or you could, maybe even better, is you can use this instruction, compile include, and that's going to mean include that dependency inside of my module and then hide it from other modules. I'm only using it privately, locally. And so the resolver can figure this out and can know this because it now looks at the jar. When it analyzes your jar and it sees, oh, you have no external package dependencies. Everything you're depending on is inside your jar, so you're more safe and encapsulated. So it's going to resolve, hopefully. Now you can also go into Liferay Workspace and you can say, oh, this is a module. I don't want, if I have 10 portlets and they're all going to use Commons Lang, I would like to share that. So most likely you want to put that in your OSGI modules folder, and we have a way to do that in Liferay Workspace as well. So I am running out of time. Let me zoom forward to the roadmap. There's the roadmap, and we'll publish that later. But basically, it's Liferay Workspace. We're going to support Docker, containers. We're going to add some testing scaffolding for integration and functional testing. We have a new version of the code upgrade tool that's going to support more upgrade scenarios. And then for the Blade tool, we're going to try to support, we're going to try to just release faster so we can get features to you more quickly. That's all the time I have. If you have any questions, you can find me afterwards. Does that sound good, or do we have any time for questions, or should we go afterwards right downstairs? Thank you, though. Thank you for your time.